being able to speak your mind, being able to be comfortable with your peers instead of feeling that kind of fear of the judgmental side of things.
How do we get them to perceive different mental health disorders to others as well?
That's it. That's actually it. Your parents just genuinely just may not have the equipment to help you.
Yeah.
And it is that thing of taking a step back and being like, I can open up and tell you I suffer from depression, but I shouldn't expect you to tell me how to deal with it. My mum had all of us I think all of us, mostly all her children at this point. You think me right now I could have a child?
That's a hell of a lot of baggage.
What? Nah.
That's a hell of a lot of baggage, and I'm just like, well, to be honest, I wouldn't want to dismiss, the fact that they have had a lot of pain, or disregard the fact that I'm also going through a different sense of pain as I'm growing up. Where was I going with this? But I think that is like, what do we do? So my dad is a widower. He's a widower of 4 kids, and the eldest is 30 plus and a doctor. So for him, this is great. Like, this child is not a failure, and another child is an engineer. That's not a failure. And then there's like me and my younger brother who are doing things. So it's just like, this is great. You know, I have stories to tell, like my extended friends and family. Like, I've got a doctor and an engineer. Like, my daughter's working in mental health, which is massive right now. Mental health awareness is booming. So like, that's great things for him to say. Like, his children aren't just not doing anything. So that's the type of thing that brings him pride.
Right.
And it's almost like having a sense of like pride and like, yes, I've done this alone. That's good for their mental health. But underlying all of that is, then he's kind of like, oh, well, they're leaving. My kids are getting older.
Right.
So, and I do think, when parents have got their kids, as much as they are like, okay, you know, my mental health is this for a reason, they are going to feel alone. So I've read this book, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Poetry Pharmacy. Remember I showed it to you before? So there's a whole topic on, like, seeing our parents as just normal people.
Yeah.
Right. And not superheroes, right?
Not superheroes.
Right.
Even though at the same time, like, I don't know if our generation always perceive a lot of our parents as superheroes.
I definitely do.
Or, I mean, I see my dad as like, he's the person who is 50% of why I am around.
Yeah.
Like, he's the reason for my existence. But I don't know if I ever considered him to be my superhero, mostly because he's a man. But like, he is a person.
Yeah.
And it's considering him to be his very own individual who existed way before he ever thought about me.
Yeah.
Way before he ever thought about me or my brothers, or even finding a wife. And be like, oh, well, you're normal. Like, you are normal. You do have your faults.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as I was able to acknowledge that, arguments just kind of ceased about my mental health and his mental health. It's just like, okay, so I've acknowledged that you have your own issues. And I don't know if you really consider mine to be irrelevant to yourself. But in acknowledging that he has his own, I'm like, oh, well, that is peace in itself a little bit for me sometimes.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, just taking that step back, oh, he's having this issue, he's having this breakdown, he's yelling at me because of this.
Right.
Cool. I live with him alone. Let's put this in the bigger picture. I live with him alone, and I'm not leaving anytime soon, and I don't pay rent. So this is a win-win. Let's figure out how I can make sure that my mental health stays intact as well as his.
Yeah.
Because then it benefits both of us. Like, he gets food. Like, I cook for him. He buys the food.
Right.
It works.
Right. But do you think like, because there are, I would assume there are a lot of people in a similar situation to you whereby they live with their parents.
So there's this term that I don't think many people like it, called resilience.
Right.
And it's basically like your capacity to deal with adversity.
Right.
And I think some of it talks about how, you know, the world is crap and you are going to go through a lot of stuff. People are awful. They're going to be mean to you. But I don't like the second part of that. But the first part about how things can get hard, generally in life, how do we then build that type of resilience as we get older? How are we going to basically get over it or deal with it and be emotionally equipped with it?
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with relationships that you just build as you're getting older.
Okay.
And like parental attachment is very important. And relationships you build with your mum, your dad, your siblings, or even your friends when you're youth is incredibly important because it sets you into how you're going to deal with things emotionally as you get older. And I'm not gonna lie, I was bullied by my brothers as a child. Being the only girl, like one of my older brothers was a bully. Like, I was wedgied at home by this guy. Like it was awful. He's like my best friend now. It's great because we're older. And I
Character
do think
building at what cost?
it was character building.
At
It
what
is.
cost,
My happiness as a child, and I was a chubby kid as well. So it was awful. Like, come on, run with us. I can't do that. There was a day I remember like running up and down the stairs. For like my brother's bants, of course. Like it's just like run up and down the stairs 10 times. I'm like, wow, will I be skinny? That's a different story. But like I think like with time, my relationship with my brothers has helped me understand them and my dad.
Right.
Because they are also his kids. And we've all dealt with him. But like I think I'm obviously living with my dad alone now. I have spent so much time with him. And before I was spending time with him, I remember thinking to myself, I wouldn't wish that upon anyone.
But did you detach yourself then? Did you go through that detachment that Fiore was talking about?
The attachment stuff.
The detachment.
The detachment stuff.
Like, did you detach yourself for your own...
For my own well-being.
Yeah.
I think the best thing would probably be... I want to say no.
Okay.
Because I have 2 older brothers and 1 young brother. They don't live at home. My dad is a widower. I am his only daughter.
Right.
And in the Nigerian culture, which I get frequently told to me, is that the daughter looks after the dad.
Uh-huh.
So the daughter has to look after my dad. I'm not getting paid for this.
But what happens? What happens when you decide to move on? Which is, I guess, is a...
Do you know what? So I was just gonna say, a lot of us are our parents' therapists.
Right.
Oh, I'm not his therapist.
See, a lot of us is like our parents talk to us about things because they don't have anybody else to
oldest?
talk to.
Eldest?
No, I'm the only daughter and I'm the middle child.
Right. So, to your mum?
Yeah. And I'm kind of like the glue, as
Right.
I might say. I'm the glue. But it's... What was I going to say? When you were talking about your parents being human, I was going to say that, you know how I was saying we expect our parents to just know everything and do everything. If you're struggling, for example, sometimes I really struggle, and like I struggle to like make food or like do my laundry, whatever the case may be. I just ask my mum. Sometimes just tell them what you need. Stop waiting for them to somehow miraculously know that you're struggling and therefore you need your laundry done.
But I think we can do that now, right? Because we're slightly older. And I don't think that I could have done some of these things when I was like 15, 16. And this is another thing, like as I've generally gotten older and have this relationship with my dad, because it's just me, things have changed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not 12, 13, 14. Like being 25 and being with my dad is so much different.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, while the responsibilities have changed, there aren't a bunch of other random boys living in my house. I mean, my brothers. But it's kind of like, I could not have the conversations that I had with my dad now at 25 when I was even a first year uni student.
Right.
Absolutely not. And I think there's also a sense of my dad's kind of like, well, your eldest brother, who used to be, you know, like my name, has like got a child now. He's married and he lives with the house. So now it's just like, well, yeah, you are my body. And my dad has done this thing for as long as I can remember. When he wants to talk to you, he will do it in his prime setting, which is on a long drive when it's just you and him and you are sat in the passenger seat. If he wants to talk to you about anything, a concern he has about you, something he's happy about with you, something he just wants to talk about, it will be it's just you and him in the passenger seat.
Right.
So recently he did bring up to me, which was completely unexpected to me, about the person I'm dating. And he's just like, oh, okay. So what are you two doing now?
He's waving, by the way.
And this is... and obviously, being the only girl, and he's like stuck with me, it's just me and him. I thought, and it's because I thought he didn't say this to me, I thought he was happy for it to just be me and him for a long time. Before I've actually finished my studies, for it to be just basically me be his like nurse and his carer. I thought that was just going to be what he wanted. But he's just like, no, like, you can get married, you know? And that I just took me by surprise. I was taken aback. I was like, oh my gosh, the man is happy enough with me that he's ready for me to leave. And I have never been more surprised in my life by this guy.
Right. I hear that, but I also... I don't want this to sound too mad.
Go for it.
And maybe if you guys agree, back me up. But...
At this point, I don't know if I really want to agree or disagree. I'm going to come out to say it.
But is that his right?
Are we going to have a conversation about the patriarchy?
We can get onto that a bit after. I mean, we've got a couple other stuff. But, like, would that be his right? In fact...
Culturally, yes.
You know what? True. But also, because... I feel like I'm my dad's favourite child presently. I'm so happy with letting him be happy. And this is the thing. I feel like I'm almost... okay, we are part of our parents' mental health also.
Right.
Like, we impact that. And if there is a way for me to be happy with myself and also for me to maintain that part of his mental health, why would it not be?
I'm with you on that.
Because like we are a massive part of our parents' well-being. We are their well-being, essentially.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I feel like it collides, though. I feel like what for them would be great for their mental health and like their pride and blah 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 blah, not necessarily is the best thing for us. Like, people put themselves in situations, like, for example, going to uni just for the sake of their parent being able to, you know what I mean? Like, the parents being able to say, my child went to uni, but what happened to you while you were at uni? Do you get what I mean? Like, it's sometimes, I feel like a lot of us are not selfish.
Right.
We're quite selfless and we very much think about our parents, and a lot of the stuff we do is that to make them happy, but sometimes we have to, like, be selfish and kind of be like, but what's okay for me and my mental health, even if it means that unfortunately it's going to upset my parents,
right.
Because we can't continue to just do anything and everything to make them happy.
Absolutely.
Like, even for me, for example, like going on to a PhD, like, I'm quite lucky that I've had conversations and I've convinced my mum, and she's like okay with the idea of me getting married after the PhD. Do you get what I mean?
Wow.
You see wow.
Wow.
But, like, should I even have to have that conversation? Like, is it not my own relationship, like my mental health, my well-being, when I feel like I'm ready to do X, Y, and Z? But even something like that for the rest of my life, it's like, to make them happy, people just do stuff to make them happy.
I wouldn't say I'm doing it to make him happy, but it's
but a lot of people do, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. I feel like a lot of us lose ourselves to make them okay, and I feel like we're kind of getting to that stage where we're just like, unfortunately I have to start being selfish. Like, unfortunately I have to start thinking of me as like number one. And also with saying that, it's also acknowledging that, like you said, they're human and there are just certain things that they're going to do that is just going to annoy you. Yeah. There's certain things that culturally is going to happen that could genuinely affect your mental health, and I feel like when you accept it, don't have to agree with it.
Yeah.
But when you get to a point, like I got to a point where I just accepted, like, my parents are the way they are with certain things, it's not going to change.
Right.
Like, doesn't matter what I say, it's not going to change. Culturally, certain things are there, it's not going to change. And once you accept it, you kind of get to a point of peace where it doesn't upset you as much anymore, because you're not sitting there thinking, my parents don't like me, this is why they're doing X, Y, and Z. You can just honestly say, like, culturally, this is what it is. I'll just ignore it. Do you know what I mean? Like, when people get on to me about the whole cooking and like, as a female and blah, 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 like, I just brush it off now and just say whatever. because I try to. It doesn't upset me as much anymore because I just know culturally it is where it is, but I've chosen the path of education and kind of full force going down that route. And I personally I'm not a huge like cooking fan. But I think when you start to just acknowledge and accept that them as humans, they have their own kind of like ideas and cultures and things that they believe to be
base
true.
Expectations.
Yeah, then you kind of can just get to a point where like that stuff won't upset you as much anymore, and hopefully then it won't affect your mental health as much anymore,
Right.
because you've just got to a point where you're just like, it's not your parents, it's just the culture.
Okay.
And you then can have a better relationship with your parents as well, because you're not sitting there thinking it's them, it's just a culture thing.
Right.
Like when back home, aunties, uncles, grandparents call, they're all asking about marriage, they're all asking about all these things. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
But you just learn to accept it. You're kind of just like,
It is what it is.
it is what it is. And I feel like honestly when I got to that point where I was just like, I accept them as humans, not just as my parents,
Right.
but them as humans, knowing what they've gone through and knowing the mindset that they have. I just accept it, and I will just choose what I allow to enter my zone and what I won't allow to enter. And that's honestly been like the best thing for me, because genuinely at this age, don't really know how much you can change. Like you can educate them,
Right.
but the idea of changing your parents when in their 40s, 50s, 60s,
Teaching an old dog new tricks. Like,
it's just I think that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying earlier. By some things, it's just you just have to accept.
Right.
It is what it is. You may not agree with it, but it is what it is, and just accept them for who they are.
Right.
You wouldn't want your parents trying to change you.
Right.
So why are we just trying to change them 24/7? Why can't we accept them as who they are, the same way we're asking them to accept us as who we are? Does that make sense?
Right. It makes sense. It also, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. I get it. I'm with it. I mean, for me, I guess what I'm getting from this in like a smaller, condensed version is essentially like, I don't want to put words into your mouth, so correct me if I'm saying this wrong. Is basically, you know, kind of, don't try or don't. I mean, I know that sounds mad.
Try.
I mean, that sounds mad. But
Try, but there's
once you hit that brick wall, you've hit it.
just accept that there's certain things
Right.
that aren't going to change. That's it.
Yeah.
Accept there's certain things that aren't going to change. But when you are trying, also accept that you're two different generations.
Cool.
So like I said earlier, if you want your parent to understand your anxiety, maybe find an Eritrean doctor, if you are Eritrean, who is on YouTube, who speaks about it in our language, because that's how they're going to understand it best. If you're of another ethnicity, find someone of their age who's educated in that field to teach them. But it's that thing of you can't teach them, you just have to help them.
Yeah, and I think there's a difficult mindset there, because I was talking to one of my boys about this, where it's like, you know, I'm 25, turning 26 real soon. There's been 25, my mum's raised me for 25 years, and she's seen me do stupid shit for 25 years. How is this idiot trying to tell me about how to be like, not that she thinks that, but like, you get what I'm saying? Like, you've done all this stuff, like, you've done reckless stuff, you've done good stuff as well, but you've done this reckless stuff. And when it comes to you trying to, I don't know, what I've seen is like, when somebody who isn't, I don't know, I don't want to use the word qualified, but isn't like, you know, at a point where you will listen to them. Because, like, you know, they'll listen to somebody who's older than them, right?
Yeah.
They might listen, like you said, your mum would listen to her grandma. Would listen to her mum, your grandma, right? And, you know, but more so, like, it might not go the other way. So I think your point there saying that, like, you know, have them listen to somebody who is qualified and of them from their side.
It needs to be one of those videos that they love to send around on WhatsApp. It needs to be one of those. Like, the ones that are like, oh, coronavirus is bad. Don't get the vaccine. Yeah, in the auntie group. It needs to be in the auntie's group chats, because that's what they'll listen to.
English isn't their first language.
Yeah.
When we're trying to say depression, there may just be another. There may be a way to say it in our language that we just don't know.
There's one word in Eritrean, as far as I'm concerned about like mental health when it's like,
Hey, mum.
it's just you're ill. Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, but my son's not
It
ill.
doesn't translate in every
I'm
single
not ill.
culture. It's
Right.
really, really strange.
Yeah.
In every language, it absolutely doesn't translate. Different words, like, there was a term like self-esteem, which is a massive part of mental health. What the hell is that? In, like,
I don't know
in the East Asian culture, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
It's that thing of like, you know, a lot of us have struggled. I would say that like you try to keep your culture and you also adapt to where you are. It's like we're trying to force a culture onto them that they don't know, and that's why I mean, as it's quite a difficult thing because I don't want to put a lot on the people who are struggling, but I really feel like with parents, especially our parents at this age, it's like it's finding that middle ground of yes, express yourself, and yes, educate them the best way you can, but protect yourself. And sometimes protecting yourself just isn't talking to them about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
but then it means protecting yourself means finding someone who you can talk about.
exactly.
And that's like, so we're at 25, 26. The younger people in schools are like a massive priority for me because they have to deal with it for longer than we do. And their parents might also be our parents' age, which is slightly more tricky for them. So it's like, okay, you need to find the best source to reach out to.
Right.
And like, what is that? It's not social media, realistically. I mean, it can be.
It could be social media.
It can be, depending on what you use. I mean, if this is on YouTube, watch this. But, I mean, otherwise, like, what is the best source? Like, how are you going to protect yourself if you're not going to talk to anyone at home?
Right. And so this comes on to the next topic, which is the next thing, which is, I guess, therapy, right? Would you say would be...
Are we talking about people our age? This is actually a good question to ask because it really depends on age. Like I was saying earlier with tell your parents what you need.
Yeah.
If you're struggling and you're just like, Mum, my depression has just gotten really bad and right now, like, I just need help with X, Y, and Z, give them practical things to do. But if a person's 11, 12, 13, can they... Do you get what I mean? Like, in this context of what we're talking about, are we talking about people our age, as in like...
So essentially, when it comes to like, in my head, what I'm thinking is, when it comes to like talking to parents and stuff, we're definitely talking to a mature audience, right? The younger kids would be when I was gonna jump onto what Tobias had mentioned earlier, which was school, the impact that school had on him, and the way, you know, I'm not gonna say him, us, bro, like it's the same thing, like how, you know, I don't know what it's like for women when you're growing up, but for us, if you're crying, you're a pussy. Like, facts, like, why are you crying for, bro? You're a big man, you know, don't cry, like, and it's like, maybe that's affected me now at this age now because man can't shed a tear for anything, really.
Yeah.
Like, proper, like, so.
That's what they are,
Right.
because they spend almost as much time as they spend at home, they spend at school.
Right.
Yeah.
And they are expected to be in school from the ages of, 3 to 18?
Yes.
So they're spending a hell of time with these teachers. Why should teachers not then be trained in some sort of mental health?
Yeah. There is a lack of support for the teachers as well.
That's what you told me, was we've got this support system that I can go talk to. So in America, certain schools have counsellors for teachers.